This is Tim Hepson. I'm Associate Vice President for Student Life here at the University of Alabama. I'm talking about Charlie Blondell. Charlie I met through a mutual friend when he was a freshman, so I've gotten to know him well through this time here at Alabama. Last summer he had the privilege to go to Alaska and work in the salmon industry, and so obviously he's very passionate for those that know him about sustainability as well. So I'm very interested in hearing his talk about sustainability, salmon fishing, and all that. So hopefully you enjoy what he has to say. Have a great day.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. Before we get started, I have a question for you guys. What is more valuable, gold or salmon? My name is Charles Blondell, and tonight we're going to be talking about salmon, sustainability, how they are related, and why it affects all of us. Let's begin with salmon, one of the most widely consumed seafoods in the United States. But like many of the items that we purchase, the average American is ignorant of where it comes from and how it gets to us. Let me show you where over half of the world's salmon comes from. We are looking specifically at Bristol Bay, Alaska, located right here. Let's dive a little bit deeper. Every summer, wild Pacific salmon swim through Bristol Bay into each of these tributaries to spawn and deposit their eggs. This diagram illustrates the life cycle a little bit more clearly. After hatching from their eggs in the freshwater system, they then grow and develop for a couple of years, before eventually swimming out to the Pacific Ocean in the saltwater environment to live and feed as adult salmon. And finally, at the end of their lives, and this is truly the amazing part, they return to the freshwater ecosystem where they were hatched to spawn and deposit their eggs, giving way to new life. And then they die. But the cycle continues. Now, this is a resource that Native Alaskan fishing tribes have been dependent on for over 4,000 years. It is the livelihood, the culture, and the heart of these people and the land around them. So why am I talking about it? Well, let me take you back a few years to my senior year of high school. I remember sitting in the lunchroom with one of my best friends, and we were talking about our plans for that summer and whatnot. But after hearing that I had none, he looked me in the eyes and said, "You're coming to Alaska with me." And I said, "What do you mean, man?" Before I knew it, I was on a plane from Seattle, Washington to Bristol Bay, Alaska. Anchorage, Alaska first. Then, from Anchorage to the tiny town of Dillingham, roughly 2,500 in population. Finally, I got on a 6-passenger hopper plane from Dillingham to the tiny coastal village of Ekuk, Alaska. Now, during the summer, Ekuk is home to about 200 fishermen and factory plant workers, and they all convene and work at Ekuk Fisheries. Let me walk you through a typical day at Ekuk. Fishermen reel in their nets from the last tide to harvest their catch and load it into the back of pickup trucks before being delivered to the docks of Ekuk. There, it is put into holding tanks before being transferred by conveyor belts into the fish house, the factory, to be beheaded, gutted, frozen, and then shipped off to commercial buyers. Now, during the season, this cycle happens constantly. Factories like this one operate every day, 24 hours a day, and don't stop until sizable amounts of fish cease to be caught. Now, at first, it wasn't that bad. The 6, 8-hour, even 12-hour shifts were pretty manageable. But when we started working 16-hour shifts every day, 7 days a week, the tedious, repetitive, and physical aspect of the work began to wear on me and my coworkers. And as the season went on, the speed only increased. We were eventually processing 36 fish per minute. Quite frankly, it was exhausting. I remember about 2 weeks in telling myself, I'm never going back. You couldn't pay me enough to do that job again. So the season ended, grabbed my check, got on that plane, and hoped to never look back. But then the next summer rolled around, and back I found myself on that plane from Seattle to Anchorage to Dillingham, finally back to ECUC. Season went the same way, miserable. The whole time, I hated it. Said I would never go back. The next summer rolled around, and back to ECUC I found myself. So what was it? Why did I keep going back if I claimed it to be so terrible? Well, I'd be lying if I said the money wasn't great, because it was. But that wasn't the reason. After some thought, I realized that I had fallen in love with the job and the people with whom I worked. I found peace and asylum in that factory. And I know that might sound contradictory to the hectic and restless picture I painted earlier, but it's the truth. Up there, no internet, no cable, maybe a phone call if you get some service bars. But besides that, you're isolated. You're in a secluded world, a world where your only responsibility is processing fish. It was an escape for me and so many others, and we loved it. Now, ECUC Fisheries is one of the smallest in Bristol Bay. They processed just over 8 million pounds last summer. Now, that might sound like a lot, but some of the larger ones, they can process up to 2 million pounds in just one 24-hour cycle. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry, not only sustaining corporations that employ roughly 14,000, myself included, but also maintain a native Alaskan fishing lifestyle that has been around for centuries. But what if I were to tell you that this way of life is in danger? What do we know about gold? Well, it's an element with 79 protons and a boiling point of just over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It has been used as a monetary unit in jewelry pieces and art collections. Estimates show that the world's value in gold grosses just over 9 trillion US dollars. It is a symbol of wealth, prosperity, beauty, and power. And it is mined. Introduce Pebble Limited Partnership, a branch of the Canadian mining company Northern Dynasty Minerals. In 2011, Pebble issued a plan to build a gold and copper mine in Bristol Bay. Estimates indicate that this mine would leave a footprint larger in square miles than the island of Manhattan and almost as deep as the Grand Canyon. Now, when word about this got into the fishing community, there was outrage, uproar, and they strongly urged the EPA to investigate Pebble's plan. And after 3 years of scientific research and study, the EPA issued a Clean Water Act designation that safely protected Bristol Bay from any mining projects. That was in 2014. In 2017, the CEO of Pebble Limited Partnership met with newly appointed EPA Director Scott Pruitt, and after one meeting, got him to repeal the restriction, an act that took 3 years, hundreds of hours to have established, was undone with one meeting. Now, a few months after this, Pruitt decided to revoke his decision. But Pebble is still pursuing the mine because they believe Pruitt will reverse his decision once again. And what are the consequences if he does? Well, according to the EPA, this mine has the potential to destroy up to 94 miles of streams and tributaries, with an additional 4,900 acres surrounding Bristol Bay. This is an intricate part of the salmon life cycle. If taken away, they would lead to massive losses in the salmon population. The EPA claims these losses to be irreversible. The world's largest and most pristine salmon run in the world would be destroyed. Now, environmentally, this is devastating, but it doesn't make a lot of sense economically either. Although there are estimates that this mine could lead to billions in revenue, whatever profit could be harvested would eventually run out. As we have seen time and time again with our dependency on non-renewable resources, we run into a dead end. Now, Salmon fisheries, like ECUC, are renewable in a sense. Their product returns in cyclical patterns, and it will continue to do so if undisturbed. However, if this mine is built, the salmon may never return. Now, why does this affect all of you? Well, if you like salmon, this is the worst news you could hear. Because of the massive losses of supply, the price would skyrocket. But there are larger implications. Pebble Mine does not just represent a mining company. ECUC Fisheries, not just a salmon fishery. These represent two combating ideologies in the United States. One that supports the exploitation of fossil fuels and non-renewable resources, and one that fights to create and maintain sustainable avenues. No one can deny that our world is running out of fossil fuels and non-renewable resources such as gold and copper. However, there is still massive support for the exploitation, for the continuation of exploitation of these industries for profitable and quick solutions. Now, this mine would be a devastating blow to planet Earth and those attempting to save it. What does it mean for our citizens, our nation, and our world if we continue to fall victim to programs like Pebble Mine? It means that we are avoiding the real issues at stake. It means that we are ignoring the imminent threat to humanity and to our future. Our future and our livelihood are being destroyed. Bristol Bay, Alaska might be the next victim. But there is hope. After learning about these events in 2017, I was astonished. Quite frankly, I was shocked. I couldn't believe that such a seemingly careless and reckless decision could be made by a department whose sole purpose is to protect the environment. I felt as though I was under attack. This was a place where I had become a man in a lot of ways. Learned achievement, character, discipline. I had grown to love a people that knew the same and had known the same for generations. They had become my family. My family was under attack. When I went back to Alaska last summer, I saw this symbol everywhere. On hats, t-shirts, flags in the back of pickup trucks. And it told me something. It told me that these people were not going to go down without a fight. Their voice was not going to be unheard. My voice, our voice, is not going to be unheard. You can go to this website, www.savebristolbay.org, to sign the pledge to protect Bristol Bay, or even donate to help the cause. Let's ensure that these miraculous creatures continue to have a home to come back to every year. And let's begin to turn the tide of human behavior in favor of sustainability for our environment and our economy. When asked about this situation, University of Washington professor Thomas Quinn, who has been studying this area for over 30 years, had this to say: "This is the jewel in the crown of the world's fishery resources in salmon. If this is not worth saving, then what is?"